Welcome to Red Sky Alliance WAPAC Labs Threat Brief. My name is Bill Schenkelberg, and I'll be your host today. We will begin with Matt and myself presenting on the continued cyber worries associated with merchant vessel and the associated transportation supply chain. 5 years ago, Red Sky Alliance collected, analyzed, and reported on a breach of the Danish Pilots Association, or Dan Pilot. Dan Pilot is a publicly owned Danish company who provides piloting service to ships passing between the Baltic Sea and the North Sea. This service is like air traffic controllers, but only on the water. This heavily traversed area is a primary route for the movement of oil and other goods between Russia, the Nordic countries, and the northern part of the European Union. If you look up on the slide there, that was a picture from 3 days ago, and you could see how busy those shipping channels are. And the Dan Pilot is kind of like the air traffic controllers for that area, only for ships. So in 2015, hackers compromised the Dan Pilot computers. At that time, we felt that the computers were likely targeted by Nigerian hackers who installed keyloggers on their network to collect Dan Pilot usernames and credentials. This information was shared with the Danish authorities, and we believe disastrous physical, financial, and cyber results were averted. But the fact that they were able to even compromise that system and gain entry in there could have been even at a level of a terrorist type attack, although it wasn't at the time, thank God. Roughly 90% of the world's commodities are transported by sea, with over 70% of those as container ships. And if you look at the top left picture, that's one of the large container ships, and you can see how many containers are on there and how many different commodities are shipped via the shipping containers. The 1950s saw a dramatic shift to this containerized shipping. From 1966, which was the first international transport of 236 containers, the industry grew to some container ships that now carry over 9,000 containers. The remainder of ships that are on the seas are for bulk products and tankers of sizes up to the capacity that hold 4 million barrels of oil, or about 170 million gallons of product. Shipping is the lifeblood of the global economy. Without shipping, international trade, the bulk transportation of raw materials, and the import-export of affordable goods and manufactured goods and food would simply not be possible. The seaborne trade continues to expand and brings benefits for customers across the world through competitive freight costs. Reason being is shipping by water is the cheapest form of transportation in all the different transportation modes. Thanks to the efficiencies of maritime shipping as a mode of transport and an increased economic easing, the prospects for the industry's future continue to grow even to this day, and in a strong direction. There are over 50,000 merchant ships trading internationally, transporting every type of cargo that you can think. The world fleet is registered in over 150 nations and manned by over 1 million sailors from virtually every nation on Earth. Ships are getting more and more technically sophisticated, and vessels are now have a high value close to $200 million each to build. That's the current cost. And the operation of merchant ships generates an estimated annual income of over $500 billion in freight rates. Attacks like the Maersk cyber incident can bring this rosy prospect to a complete halt. And in essence, in a portion of the shipping industry, it did 2 years ago. Then there is currently testing of automatic drone ships or unmanned ships, which now brings an even another dimension into the cyber aspect of maritime shipping. Next is the supply chain. And why is the supply chain so important? Maritime traffic is most likely the longest and cheapest part of the overall international supply chain. Though this brief is targeting the vessel operators and owners, the entire supply chain is at risk and definitely interconnected. The first circle is a crucial point. And that very first circle, which is a little bit hard to see, but that's where the product begins. And from where the product begins, that's where the shipping transit starts. So if a hacker was able to get in at that point, he could theoretically infect everyone along that supply chain. So that's a crucial point in the first step of this supply chain. The next vulnerable points are the ports themselves. And those are listed on this list here as stevedores, which I think is important because stevedores are the people that work in the ports. And a lot of times it's your insider threat that is the person that could be within a conspiracy to smuggle goods, bring terroristic type weapons in, or any type of other type contraband. About 15 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and they explained a past investigation in the Port of Montreal, which was back then kind of focused on physical security, but now it was the conspiracy consisted of the stevedores, the Teamsters Union, the local La Cosa Nostra, and the Hells Angels, all working in concert to smuggle actually narcotics through the port. Again, they were using fax communication at that time because of the technology, but now everything's computers, which gives the opportunity for hackers an even greater opportunity to try and get information and smuggle goods through the ports. So the ports are a real crucial point that we take a look at all the time. In addition to the ports, all the communication goes through the ports, all the transportation points go through the ports, and that's why it's a huge, valuable target there. We're still seeing that phishing campaigns is one of the biggest culprits to the maritime cyber attacks, which Matt's going to explain how we take a look at that. But I don't know if anyone saw the news from this morning. One of the stars from the Shark Tank show was actually phished recently, and it was through her real estate company. And the email was sent to her secretary, who ended up sending along over, they say, close to $400,000 of her money that was sent out. And it was all through a relatively simple phishing attack, which is what we see all the time in the maritime industry. Okay, now that you know about the importance of the maritime portion of the supply chain, let's look at how Red Sky Alliance helps support cybersecurity awareness for our maritime industry friends. Each week, we provide a vessel impersonation report, the top 5 indicators, and the maritime watch list. And we provide that to our friends and colleagues in the maritime industry. And the final one is what we call the Maritime Watch List, which is a CSV of all those indicators that we have collected from the past week. So where can you find these reports? We publish these reports each week in PDF form and place them on our redskyalliance.org portal under the Transportation drop-down link. Additionally, we share our weekly products with our friends and colleagues over in the UK with a group called Dryad Global. Dryad provides excellent maritime intelligence to their clients, and we support the cybersecurity awareness to Dryad for their clients over in the UK and in the European Union. With that, I'll now pass the presentation over to Matt, who's going to fully explain each of these reports and how they can help you. It's all yours, Matt.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Widener, a cyber engineer and analyst with Red Sky Alliance. I'm going to talk about the top 5 maritime watch list first. It's prepared on a weekly basis and published toward the end of each week. Shown on this slide here is a sampling of the information that we include in that report, which I'm going to detail in just a few minutes. But first, I want to talk about how we produce the report. We monitor malicious email traffic through VirusTotal, and from those emails, we extract the information in these tables. And then we use some custom software to produce trending metrics for that data over the past 7 days and publish them in these tables here. So starting in the top left, you'll see we have the top 5 malicious maritime email senders. So these are the email addresses that we see the majority of the phishing traffic from over the past 7 days, along with the malware variants that are being sent out by those senders. In the bottom left, you'll see the subject lines along with the full sender field from those emails, along with the number of times that we saw them in our collection that week. In the top right, you'll see the sending IP address. And these are the IP addresses that the emails are being sent from, their geolocation information, along with the number of times that it appeared in our collection. And then in the bottom right, you'll see the sending domain. And these correspond to the mail servers, the domain names of the mail servers that are sending out those emails, along with the ISP that's hosting them and the number of times that we saw them in our collection. So as actionable intelligence, an organization could feed this information into their own email protection systems to watch for incoming email traffic from these malicious senders, IP addresses, and domains, as well as for messages that contain these subject lines to either block them or issue alerts to their staff. And lastly, it's possible to pivot on this information by feeding the subject lines or the email senders back into VirusTotal to find out if your chosen antivirus solution can defend against the identified malware threats. In addition to the top 5 trending data in the written report, we provide a CSV file with all of the technical indicators that we observed over the past 7 days that was covered by the report. So here in this example, you'll see we include the first seen date, which indicates the first time that an indicator was seen in our collection. The indicator column there contains the technical indicator that we observed on that date, and then the indicator context column describes what kind of data is in the indicator field. For example, in this slide, we see indicator context of sender domain and sender email, and those types of indicators correspond to the mail server domain and the email address that the email was sent from, and that's extracted from the from field. Other indicator types that we provide in the watch list are the sender field, and this is the sender's email address, including the long form name that's associated with that address that was included in the email. The sending domain, which is the domain from the emails from field. The sending domain, which is the domain of the mail server from which the email was sent, and that's derived from the received header chain in the email headers. The sending IP, which is the IP of the email server from which the email was sent, and that's also derived from the received header chain. The subject lines, and those are the subject lines that are used in the malicious email to try to get the user to open it. And all of these indicators can be used to, again, either alert cybersecurity staff or block incoming emails that have a high probability of delivering malware. Moving on to the vessel impersonation report. Here we focus on a strict subset of our malicious emails collection in which specific vessel names are mentioned in the email subject lines or in the message body. So the content of those malicious emails are then analyzed by a human to determine what vessel is being impersonated. We use marinetraffic.com for that information. Provides a lot of information on individual shipping vessels. In this example that you see here for Merck's Passion, for example. From this rich open data source, we can identify the vessel's nationality and details on the vessel's current position or destination. And sometimes the attackers can get this wrong in their malicious email. For example, the email may state that the vessel will soon be in Hong Kong and request cash to master services, when in reality, the vessel is currently on its way to Singapore. Other times, an attacker may use a vessel name that has been used in the past but is no longer assigned to that vessel. And then on rare occasions, we'll see a name used that is not assigned to any vessel, or at least one that we can't find in open sources. Or it belongs to some other maritime equipment, such as a navigation aid. So verifying those little details in those messages can go a long way toward determining if a message is legitimate or not. We also look at who is sending the malicious email and from the IP address that it's being sent, and those technical indicators can be used again to drive intrusion detection and prevention systems to alert or block incoming malicious emails. Even in cases where your chosen antivirus solution may not detect the attached malware. So those indicators can be very useful. We look at who's being targeted, what organizations the emails are being sent to. We often see different elements in the transportation supply chain being targeted with banking malware or credential stealing malware, ports, companies that contract with maritime cargo transporters, goods producers, and also companies that provide services to ships while in port. We report on what pretext is being used to entice the user to open the email. So some of the common pretexts that we see are cache to master requests or CTM requests, pro forma disbursement account requests or PDA requests, and questionnaire 88 requests or Q88 requests. We also look at the types of attachments that are used for delivery. Attackers will use malware-infected attachments that imitate legitimate maritime industry-specific forms to entice a user to open those attachments. For example, is it an Excel spreadsheet? Is it a Word document or a PDF? Is it an executable file masquerading as a PDF? Or is it one of those forms I mentioned before, a PDA form or a Q88 form? We look at what malware is being delivered and what that malware might do if it's triggered on the recipient's system. Is it ransomware? Is it credential stealing malware? Does it focus on banking credentials? Those are common things we see. We also look at if there are multiple emails using the same subject line but delivering different malware variants. We see that frequently as well. And lastly, the report maps sending and receiving IP addresses, as you see in the top left image there, to analyze geographic trends. So far this year, we have mainly seen Asian organizations being targeted with these vessel impersonation emails, and in countries such as Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and Japan. However, as you know, attackers can change their focus at any time. And should that happen, we believe this report may provide a leading indicator as to the TTPs that you might see. So what's the value here? Again, we believe this report provides actionable intelligence on adversary TTPs that an organization could use to strengthen their security posture. In the example table up on the right, taken from one of our vessel impersonation reports, we see attackers recently leveraging the coronavirus scare as a pretext to increase the probability of a recipient opening the malicious attachment. And so raising awareness of emerging tactics like this could make a difference between a successful attack and an unsuccessful one. And that's all I have on this topic for today. Bill, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Matt. That was a really good explanation of what we can provide to our current clients and any future clients. I think the big thing here is being proactive. You know, this information can be offered back to our clients or prospective clients in a proactive fashion to prevent these attacks from getting into their system. Because once you get something into your system, I don't want to say it's too late, but it's kind of too late. We want to try and prevent that and stop that before it happens. And I think the other point to bring up too is the human element of this analysis. We could provide that also. You know, you can get the raw data, but deciphering that raw data and connecting it to the vessels themselves, and then providing that product is we think a very valuable service. And thank everyone here for attending today's presentation. I hope the briefs were of interest and helpful in your cybersecurity endeavors. Hope to see you all next month. Take care.